My name is Alistair Finch, or at least it was. I suppose the was is important now. I lived a life, a full one, a life of purpose and profound impact, a life that many would call blessed, and in many ways it was. But every blessing has its source, and every source its price. Mine was paid in the quiet, damp woods outside Ballynahone, a village so small it barely registered on a map, nestled deep in the heart of Ireland. A proper little spot it was. It was a night like any other, or so I thought. The wind howled through the ancient oaks, carrying the scent of damp earth and distant peat fires. I was a young man then, brimming with ideas but lacking the means to bring them to fruition. A dreamer, a tinkerer, a mind buzzing with concepts for clean energy, for medical breakthroughs, for ways to connect humanity like never before. But I was poor, unknown, and utterly without influence. Desperate, perhaps, or simply ambitious beyond my station. A bit of a gombeen, you might say, with grand notions. I remember the chill that permeated the air deeper than any winter night. It was late, past midnight, and I had wandered into those woods, seeking a quiet space for my thoughts to coalesce, to escape the suffocating weight of my own limitations. And then it was there, not appearing with a flash or a dramatic flourish, but simply there, a distortion in the air, a ripple in the fabric of reality, and then a form, tall and slender, coalescing from the shadows beneath the ancient trees. It was not what you would expect, no little green man, no bug-eyed monster. It was elegant, a being of pure, shifting light and shadow, its form indistinct yet undeniably present. It had no discernible face, but I felt an intelligence, ancient and vast, radiating from it. A voice, not heard with my ears, but directly in my mind, resonated with a cold, clear precision.
You seek advancement. You seek influence. You seek to alter your world.
My heart hammered against my ribs. Fear, primal and absolute, seized me. Every instinct screamed to run, to flee into the night, but I was rooted to the spot, mesmerized by its impossible presence. I was absolutely gobsmacked.
Your desires are noted. Your potential observed. We offer a transaction.
A transaction. The word hung in the air, devoid of emotion, purely clinical. I swallowed, my throat dry. What? What kind of transaction? I managed, feeling a bit of a chancer for even speaking.
Your consciousness, your unique pattern of thought and experience. Upon the cessation of your biological functions, it will be ours for study. In exchange, we provide the means to fulfill your ambitions. Knowledge, resources, the spark to ignite your world's next great leap.
My consciousness, my soul, effectively. The implications were staggering, terrifying, but then my mind raced. The poverty, the frustration, the brilliant ideas gathering dust in my head, the helplessness I felt watching the world struggle with problems I believed I could solve, if only I had the chance. This was the chance, a dark, impossible chance. For how long? I managed to project, my voice a tremor in the silence of the woods.
For as long as required. The duration is irrelevant to us. The data is paramount. You will live a full life by your species' standards. You will achieve your aspirations. You will be content. Then the transfer will occur.
Content, a full life. The world changing because of me. The temptation was overwhelming. The fear, though still present, began to recede, replaced by a desperate, burning ambition. I was like a dog with two tails at the thought. And if I refuse?
Then you continue as you are. Your potential remains unrealized. Your world continues its slow, predictable trajectory. No harm will come to you. No benefit will be granted.
The choice was stark, a life of quiet desperation, or a life of unimaginable impact with an unknown, terrifying price at the very end? I looked at the shifting form, the ancient trees, the dark, indifferent sky. I made my decision. I accept. There was no handshake, no formal signing. Only a subtle shift in the air, a feeling of something vast and intricate connecting with my mind. And then it was gone. The woods were silent once more, the wind still howling, the peat fires still distant. I was alone. But I was not the same, not by a long shot. The change was immediate, subtle, yet profound. Ideas that had been vague concepts in my mind solidified into intricate blueprints. Solutions to complex problems presented themselves with startling clarity. It began with energy. My first invention, a compact, highly efficient fusion reactor, revolutionized power generation. It was clean, virtually limitless, and safe. I patented it, but instead of hoarding the wealth, I established the Finch Foundation, dedicated to making this technology accessible to every corner of the globe. I believed that true progress came from shared prosperity, not exclusive gain. I wasn't going to be some tight-fisted Egypt. The world scoffed at first, then watched in awe as my prototypes delivered on every promise. Nations that had struggled with energy poverty suddenly had abundant, affordable power. Deserts bloomed, industries thrived, and the air began to clear. I poured my fortune and my relentless intellect into further innovation. I worked like a Trojan, I did. My days became a whirlwind of creation and implementation. I was driven not by greed, but by a fervent desire to see a better world. I remember the initial skepticism, the raised eyebrows from established scientists and industrialists. They called my designs impossible, my theories outlandish. But the alien's gift was not just knowledge, it was also the uncanny ability to articulate that knowledge, to convince, to inspire. I gathered around me a team of brilliant minds, drawn by the sheer audacity and undeniable promise of my work. We built the first commercial fusion plant in just 5 years, nestled quietly in the Scottish Highlands. The moment it hummed to life, providing clean, cheap energy to millions, was a triumph that echoed across the globe. Next came medicine. I developed nanobots capable of targeting and destroying cancer cells with pinpoint accuracy, of repairing damaged tissue at a molecular level. Diseases that had plagued humanity for centuries became curable. I ensured these treatments were affordable, accessible to all, not just the privileged few. I funded global clinics, trained legions of medical professionals, and championed universal healthcare initiatives. I saw the faces of parents whose children had been saved, the tears of joy from those given a second-ounce chance at life. Their gratitude was my greatest reward. It was grand, truly. I recall a young girl, no older than 5, wasting away from a rare genetic disorder. Doctors had given up. My nanobots, a mere vial of shimmering liquid, entered her bloodstream. Within weeks, she was running, laughing, a proper little terror. Her mother, a quiet woman from a remote village in Nepal, simply held my hand and wept. Those moments, they were the real gold. My inventions extended to communication, creating a global network that transcended language barriers, fostering understanding and empathy across cultures. I designed sustainable agricultural systems that ended famine in countless regions, turning barren lands into fertile bread baskets. I funded educational programs that brought knowledge to remote villages, empowering generations to build better futures. I invested in infrastructure that connected continents, facilitating trade and cultural exchange. I built schools, hospitals, research centers. I championed environmental protection, developing technologies to clean oceans, reforest deserts, and reverse climate change. I spoke at global forums, not as a wealthy industrialist, but as a passionate advocate for humanity, urging cooperation, compassion, and shared progress. I was honored, celebrated, even revered. I remember the day the last major refugee camp closed its doors, not because of war, but because its inhabitants had been resettled into thriving, self-sufficient communities, built with my sustainable housing designs and powered by my reactors. I saw children, once starving, now plump and bright-eyed, learning in schools equipped with my interactive holographic teachers. I saw nations, once at odds, collaborating on joint ventures, their leaders communicating seamlessly through my universal translation devices. It wasn't just about the technology, it was about the human connection it fostered. I was a facilitator, a catalyst. The alien's gift had allowed me to truly serve. But I never forgot the source of my gifts, the silent, shifting presence in the Irish woods. Not a chance. Sometimes, in the quiet of the night, a fleeting thought would cross my mind, a cold shiver down my spine. The pact, the price. But then I would look at the world I had helped build, the faces of the people I had helped, and the fleeting fear would dissipate. What was a soul, a consciousness, compared to the betterment of billions? It seemed a bargain, a fair exchange. Did I ever regret the pact? In those decades of relentless work, of seeing my visions become reality, of witnessing the tangible good my life brought to millions, the answer was a resounding no. I was content, more than content. I was fulfilled. I believed I had made the right choice, a necessary sacrifice for the greater good. My soul, my consciousness, whatever that alien entity sought, felt like a small price to pay for a world transformed. I lived a life of profound purpose, surrounded by people who loved and respected me, knowing that my existence had made a genuine, lasting difference. I was thankful, truly thankful, for every moment. I wouldn't change it for the world. I had lived a life beyond my wildest dreams, a life that was, by any measure, a roaring success. I was a happy man, a lucky man. My passing was peaceful. I was old, tired, but deeply satisfied. My family was around me, their faces etched with love and sorrow, but also with pride. I felt their hands in mine, heard their whispered goodbyes. The last thing I saw was the soft glow of the bedside lamp. The last thing I heard was the gentle murmur of their voices. I closed my eyes, a profound sense of peace settling over me. I felt the warmth of life fading, a gentle release. This was it, I thought. The end, a good end. But it was not the end. The warmth faded, but the awareness did not. The peace shattered, replaced by a chilling, absolute stillness. I was there. I was still there. My eyes, though closed, perceived only an impenetrable darkness. My ears, though unhearing, registered an oppressive silence. I tried to move. A finger, a toe, anything, nothing. My body was a leaden weight, unresponsive, alien. I was utterly bonjaxed. Panic, cold and sharp, began to claw at my non-existent throat. I screamed, a silent internal shriek that tore through my trapped mind. I am here! I am still here! But no sound escaped, no muscle twitch. I was a prisoner within my own flesh. A conscious mind, entombed in a lifeless vessel. It was pure agony, a living nightmare. The first sensation was the cooling, the warmth of life replaced by the creeping chill of death. Then, the stiffness. My limbs, once so agile, so capable of shaping the world, became rigid, unyielding. I felt the subtle shifts, the settling of my body as it lay on the soft surface. I felt the quiet, steady pressure of the fabric against my skin. Then came the changes, the subtle, horrifying changes. A faint, sweetish odor began to permeate my awareness, growing stronger by the hour. It was the scent of decay, my decay. I could not breathe, but the sensation of that sickening sweetness filled my non-existent lungs, coating my consciousness in its vile presence. It was enough to turn your stomach. Days blurred into an eternity of stillness. I felt the subtle shifts in temperature, the dampness that seemed to seep into my very bones. I felt the subtle movements of the surface beneath me, the creaks and groans of the wood. The box. I was in a box, a coffin. The realization was a fresh wave of terror. I was buried alive in my own dead body. The pressure of the earth above me was immense, a crushing weight that pressed down on my immobile form. Darkness, absolute and eternal, surrounded me. I felt the earth settle, the subtle vibrations of footsteps above, then silence. A profound, suffocating silence. The silence of the grave, they call it. They don't know the half of it. And then the others, the tiny, insidious invaders. I felt them, scuttling across my skin, 1,000-minute legs, a horrifying, tickling sensation that I could not swat away, could not scratch. They burrowed, they consumed. I felt the subtle tearing of tissue, the slow, relentless disintegration of my own form. My skin, once soft and warm, became dry, brittle, then cracked. I felt the tiny, unseen creatures feast upon it, their movements a constant, maddening irritation that I could not escape. My hair, once thick and white, began to loosen, strand by strand, falling away into the darkness. I felt the delicate tug as each one detached, a phantom sensation on my scalp. My flesh, my carefully preserved body, was becoming a feast. I was aware of every bite, every tear, every transformation. The muscles, once strong and vibrant, softened, turned to pulp. I felt the internal organs, the very seat of my life, liquefy and collapse. The putrid gases of decomposition built up within me, a silent internal pressure that threatened to burst me from within, yet I could not release it. The stench, though I had no nose to smell, was a pervasive, nauseating awareness, an inescapable part of my being. It was an agonizing, silent violation. My mind screamed, but the screams were trapped within the decaying confines of my skull. The eyes. Oh, the eyes. Though closed, I felt the delicate tissues around them begin to soften, to sag. I felt the tiny creatures, the unseen scavengers, working their way into the crevices, consuming the moistness. The eyeballs themselves, once windows to a world of light and beauty, became dull, then shriveled, then collapsed inward. I felt the subtle, terrifying sensation of them shrinking, becoming nothing but empty dark sockets. Yet, my consciousness, my awareness, remained fixed on that internal darkness, a void within a void. The ears. I felt the delicate structures of my outer ear, the cartilage, the skin, begin to break down. The inner ear, once a marvel of balance and sound perception, became a conduit for the dampness, the decay. I heard nothing external, no sound from the world above, only the internal ceaseless symphony of my own dissolution. The soft, wet sounds of consumption, the gentle crackle of drying tissue, the subtle murmur of the earth as it reclaimed me. These were not sounds heard with ears, but perceived directly by a consciousness trapped within. The tongue. I felt my tongue, once capable of eloquent speeches and tender words, begin to swell, then blacken, then shrivel. It became a dry, leathery thing stuck to the roof of my mouth, a constant, irritating presence I could not dislodge. I felt the rough texture of its decaying surface against my palate, a phantom taste of bitterness and rot that never left me. The bones. I felt the bones, the slow, deliberate stripping away of flesh, until the hard, unyielding framework of my skeleton was exposed to the crawling, consuming forces. I felt the joints loosen, the subtle shifting as gravity and decay took their toll. The cartilage, the ligaments, the very glue that held me together, dissolved. I was a skeleton, yet I was still me, still aware, still trapped. I felt the dust settle on my exposed bones, the fine grit accumulating in the hollows of my eye sockets, the empty cavern of my rib cage, the subtle grinding of bone on bone as the earth shifted, as the remnants of my body settled further into the soil. The coffin itself began to rot. I felt the dampness seep through the wood, the slow weakening of its structure. The earth above me shifted, tiny trickles of soil filtering through the cracks, dusting my skeletal remains. I felt the pressure of the earth, the weight of the world pressing down on my fragile, decaying form. The wood groaned, then splintered, and the earth embraced me fully. I was no longer in a box, but of the earth, indistinguishable from the soil around me. Years passed, decades, centuries perhaps. Time lost all meaning in the endless, unchanging darkness. The sensations became more diffuse, less distinct, but no less agonizing. The feeling of being a collection of scattered particles, of dust, yet still connected, still aware. I was part of the earth, absorbed into the soil, dispersed by the wind, yet my consciousness, that unique pattern of thought and experience, remained anchored to the remnants of what was once Alistair Finch. I was everywhere and nowhere, a whisper of awareness clinging to the very atoms of my former self. I was in the soil, in the roots of the trees, in the very air, yet forever bound to that decaying spot. The sheer, unending monotony was a torture in itself, a constant, unchanging awareness of my own dissolution. No escape, no oblivion, just this. And somewhere, far away, a mere glint among the cold, indifferent stars, the alien life form observed. It had collected its data. It had studied human consciousness, human death, human decay. A scientific endeavor, devoid of malice, devoid of empathy, just data. And I, Alistair Finch, the man who had transformed the world, was its eternal agonizing experiment. My magnanimous life, my contentment, my gratitude, all just variables in a cosmic equation. And my suffering, my eternal silent torment, was the final horrifying price. A cruel yoke, that.